On a crisp autumn afternoon, a homeless man sat on a busy New York City sidewalk. His clothes were tattered, his face weathered, and his eyes carried a quiet desperation that told stories of hardship most people hurried past without noticing. He held a small cardboard sign that read, "Anything helps. God bless." Beside him sat a faded backpack, his entire life condensed into a few belongings. The world around him moved at a frantic pace. Businessmen in tailored suits rushed by, students, with headphones on, dodged the crowd, and tourists snapped pictures of the bustling cityscape. No one seemed to notice the man sitting there, invisible among the chaos. As he watched people pass, a black SUV pulled up to the curb nearby. The rear door opened, and out stepped a tall, lanky teenager, Barron Trump. Despite his young age, Barron exuded a calm confidence. He was dressed in casual but expensive clothes, his demeanor understated yet unmistakably poised. The homeless man hesitated for a moment. He recognized the boy. His face was unmistakable. It was rare to see someone from a family of such wealth and influence walking the streets without a wall of security surrounding them. Gathering his courage, the man called out, "Hey kid, can you spare $1?" Barron turned toward the voice, his expression softening as his gaze met the man's. There was no trace of disdain or discomfort in his eyes, just curiosity. Instead of walking away or ignoring the plea, Barron approached him. The man felt a flicker of hope mixed with apprehension. He had encountered plenty of people who responded to his requests for help with cruel words or dismissive gestures. But something about the boy's calm demeanor made him feel he might not be met with the same disdain. Barron crouched down to the man's level, his tall frame folding gracefully. "What's your name?" he asked, his tone genuine. "Tom," the man replied, surprised by the question. Most people didn't bother asking. "Tom, why are you out here?" Barron continued, his voice steady but filled with concern. Tom hesitated, unsure of how much to share. "Life's been rough," he said simply. "Lost my job, then my home. Just trying to get by, one day at a time." Barron nodded, absorbing the words. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, tapping away briefly before looking back at Tom. "$1 won't change your life, Tom, but maybe I can help in another way." Tom stared at the boy, confused but intrigued. "What do you mean?" "I've just sent a message to someone who can help you find a place to stay and maybe even a job," Barron explained. "But while we wait for that, let's make sure you've got something to eat." Before Tom could respond, Barron stood and gestured to the nearby SUV. A man in a suit who had been watching from a respectful distance approached. Barron whispered something to him and the man nodded, walking off briskly. "You don't have to do all this," Tom said, his voice trembling. "I just needed $1. "And you'll get that $1, Barron said with a small smile. "But my mom always says, if you're going to help someone, help them in a way that makes a real difference." A few moments later, the suited man returned with a bag of food and a bottle of water. Barron handed it to Tom, who accepted it with shaky hands. The warmth of the gesture brought tears to his eyes. "Thank you," Tom said, his voice cracking. "You didn't have to do all this." Barron placed a hand on Tom's shoulder. "Everyone deserves a chance, Tom. I hope this helps you get back on your feet." As Barron turned to leave, he paused and reached into his wallet, pulling out a crisp $100 bill. He handed it to Tom with a grin. "Here's your $1, and a bit more. Use it wisely." Tom stared at the bill, speechless. For the first time in years, he felt seen. Not as a homeless man, but as a person. Barron walked back to the SUV, and as it pulled away, Tom watched until it disappeared from view. In that moment, the city felt a little less cold, and his heart a little less heavy. Barron Trump had done more than give him money and food. He had given him something far more valuable: hope. As Tom sat there clutching the bag of food and the $100 bill, he couldn't help but replay the encounter in his mind. He had grown accustomed to being overlooked and treated as an inconvenience. But Barron's kindness had cut through the bitterness and despair he'd been carrying for years. It wasn't just the money or the food, it was the way Barron had looked at him. like he mattered. The man in the suit who had helped earlier returned a short while later, carrying a folder. He crouched down next to Tom and handed it to him. Inside this folder, you'll find information on a shelter nearby that can help you get back on your feet. There's also a contact card for someone who specializes in helping people re-enter the workforce. Let them know Barron Trump sent you. Tom nodded, his voice caught in his throat. I don't know how to thank you. No need to thank me, the man said. Just take this opportunity and make the most of it. Barron believes in second chances. So do I. As the man walked away, Tom opened the folder. Inside was everything he needed. Addresses, phone numbers, and even a handwritten note from Barron that read, Tom, remember that today can be the start of something new. Don't give up, you've got this. For the first time in years, Tom felt something stir inside him. Hope. He packed up his few belongings, carefully tucking the folder and the note into his bag. With a newfound sense of purpose, he stood and began walking toward the shelter. Each step felt lighter than the last, as though the weight of his struggles had lessened, if only slightly. In the days that followed, Tom found himself at the shelter, receiving not just a warm bed and meals, but also support from people who cared about his future. The contact Barron had provided turned out to be a career counselor who helped Tom polish his resume and connect with job opportunities. Within weeks, he secured a part-time position at a local warehouse, and while it wasn't glamorous, it was a start. Word of Barron Trump's encounter with Tom eventually spread, though not because Barron had sought attention. Someone in the crowd had captured a photo of the interaction and shared it online. The image of Barron kneeling down to speak with a homeless man quickly went viral, sparking conversations about kindness and compassion. People were moved by the humility and genuine care Barron had shown, and many were inspired to help those in need in their own communities. Tom, however, didn't follow the media frenzy. He was too busy rebuilding his life. The $100 bill Barron had given him became a symbol of possibility, a reminder that someone believed in him when he couldn't believe in himself. He carried Barron's note with him wherever he went, reading it on days when doubt crept back into his mind. Months turned into a year, and Tom's life took a turn he never thought possible. With steady work, he saved enough to move into a small apartment. The walls were bare and the furniture mismatched, but it was his, a place to call home. He even began volunteering at the same shelter that had helped him, offering guidance and support to others facing the struggles he knew all too well. One day, while sorting donations at the shelter, Tom noticed a familiar face on the news playing in the background. It was Barron Trump speaking at an event about the importance of giving back and helping those less fortunate. Tom smiled as he watched. He didn't know if he'd ever have the chance to thank Barron again in person, but he hoped the young man knew the profound impact he'd made. Tom's story was a testament to how one act of kindness could ripple outward, changing not just a single life, but inspiring countless others. And though the world continued to move at its usual frenetic pace, for Tom, it was no longer a place of indifference. It was a place where hope could be found in the most unexpected moments, all thanks to a boy who stopped to ask his name. As time went on, Tom's journey became an inspiring tale within his community. His transformation from a homeless man to a self-sufficient individual with a heart for giving back resonated deeply with those who heard it. The story of how a young Barron Trump had stepped into his life at a critical moment became a beacon of hope, proving that compassion could create tangible change. Tom often visited the park where he had first met Barron, not out of nostalgia, but as a reminder of how far he had come. One chilly evening, while walking through the park, he noticed a group of people handing out food and blankets to the homeless. He approached them, curious about their work. To his surprise, the group was part of an initiative Barron had quietly started. The organization, funded by the Trump family but operating without fanfare, focused on helping homeless individuals transition to stability. Volunteers provided resources, job connections, and emotional support. The group's motto, printed on a banner, read, "Every small act can lead to big change." Tom couldn't help but smile. He introduced himself to one of the volunteers and shared his story, explaining how Barron's kindness had turned his life around. The volunteer was visibly moved and invited Tom to share his journey at one of their upcoming events. A few weeks later, Tom stood on a small stage in front of a modest crowd, recounting his experience. His voice trembled with emotion as he described the moment Barron knelt beside him, offering not just money but genuine care and a lifeline. As he spoke, he noticed a familiar figure at the back of the room. It was Barron, now taller and more composed, but with the same kind eyes Tom remembered. After the event, Barron approached Tom with a warm smile. "I'm so proud of you," he said, shaking Tom's hand firmly. "You've done the hard work to turn things around. I just gave you a push." Tom laughed, his gratitude shining through his tears. "That push saved my life," he said. "I don't know where I'd be if you hadn't stopped that day." The two talked for a while, catching up and discussing ways they could collaborate to help others in need. Barron shared his vision of expanding the initiative, and Tom offered his insights from living on the streets, eager to contribute. What had started as a chance encounter now evolved into a partnership built on shared purpose and hope. Over the years, Tom became a prominent advocate for the homeless, traveling across the country to share his story and raise awareness about the systemic issues that kept so many people trapped in cycles of poverty. His partnership with Barron's initiative grew, and together, they launched programs that provided housing, mental health support, and job training to thousands of individuals. Tom's life was no longer defined by the hardships he had endured, but by the change he had inspired. His journey, intertwined with Barron's simple yet powerful act of kindness, became a living testament to the idea that no one is beyond hope and no gesture too small to make a difference. Barron, meanwhile, remained humble, often shying away from the spotlight. When asked about his role in Tom's story during an interview, he simply said, "I just did what anyone should do, treat people with dignity and respect. Tom did the rest. He's the real hero." And so, the ripples of one small act continued to spread, touching lives far beyond what either of them could have imagined. The city, once a place of indifference for Tom, now felt alive with possibilities. And in the heart of it all, a boy's simple decision to stop and listen had set everything in motion, proving that kindness truly has the power to change the world. As Tom and Barron's collaboration deepened, their efforts began to attract national attention. Their program, now called Second Chances Initiative, was praised for its holistic approach to combating homelessness. Unlike many other organizations, it didn't just provide temporary relief. It focused on long-term solutions, addressing root causes such as mental health issues, addiction, and lack of education or skills. Tom became the face of the initiative, while Barron worked tirelessly behind the scenes to secure funding and expand its reach. Together they formed an unlikely yet powerful duo, one a former homeless man with lived experience, the other a young man with the resources and vision to make real change. Their partnership inspired people from all walks of life, proving that empathy and determination could bridge any divide. One day, while preparing for a national conference on homelessness, Barron approached Tom with an idea. "What if we create a program where people who've been helped by second chances can mentor others who are just starting their journey?" Tom's eyes lit up. "That's brilliant," he said. "No one understands the struggle better than someone who's lived it. It's like creating a chain of hope." The peer-to-peer mentorship program was born shortly after, pairing former homeless individuals who had successfully transitioned back into society with those just entering the program. The impact was immediate and profound. Seeing others who had overcome similar challenges gave participants a renewed sense of hope and motivation. As the initiative grew, so did Tom's influence. He was invited to speak at the United Nations, sharing the stage with global leaders to discuss the importance of addressing homelessness as a human rights issue. He spoke passionately, recounting his own journey and emphasizing the need for systemic change. "Homelessness isn't just about not having a roof over your head," Tom said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "It's about feeling invisible, forgotten, and hopeless. But with compassion and action, we can turn that around. I'm living proof of that." Barron, sitting in the audience, watched with pride. Though he had always been a reluctant public figure, he couldn't deny the power of Tom's words. and the impact their work was having. After the speech, they were approached by leaders from other countries, eager to replicate the program in their own communities. Despite their growing fame, neither Tom nor Barron let it distract them from their mission. They continued visiting shelters, talking to people on the streets, and listening to their stories. They believed that staying connected to the people they were helping was crucial to understanding their needs and creating meaningful change. One particularly cold winter evening, Tom and Barron walked the streets of New York City, handing out blankets and hot meals. They came across a man huddled in a doorway, his eyes filled with the same despair Tom once knew so well. Tom knelt beside him and said, "Hey, what's your name?" The man looked up, startled by the kindness in Tom's. "Why, it's Joe," he mumbled. "Joe," Tom said, smiling warmly. "I've been where you are. I know it feels like the world's given up on you, but I promise it hasn't. We're here to help." Barron handed Joe a bag of food and a card with the Second Chances Initiative's information. "We'll get you through this," he said. As they walked away, Tom turned to Barron. "That was me not so long ago," he said quietly. "If you hadn't stopped that day, I don't know where I'd be. And if you hadn't believed in yourself, none of this would have happened," Barron replied. "We're a team, Tom, and we've got more work to do." Together they continued their mission, driven by the belief that no one is beyond help, and that a single act of kindness can spark a chain reaction of change. Their story became a testament to the power of compassion, proving that even in a world often marked by indifference, hope could always find a way to shine through. As the years passed, the Second Chances Initiative grew into a global movement. It wasn't just about homelessness anymore. It had evolved into a broader platform addressing systemic inequality, mental health, and economic empowerment. What began as a small act of kindness had become a beacon of hope for millions worldwide. Tom continued to be the voice of the initiative, sharing his story at schools, conferences, and even prisons, where he spoke to inmates about resilience and the power of transformation. His raw honesty and humble demeanor resonated with people from all walks of life, inspiring countless individuals to believe in second chances, not just for others, but for themselves. Barron, meanwhile, had taken on a leadership role in the initiative as he entered adulthood. With his deep sense of responsibility and growing expertise in philanthropy, he navigated the complex world of nonprofit management, ensuring that the organization remained true to its mission. Despite his high-profile background, Barron stayed grounded, often working quietly behind the scenes and avoiding unnecessary attention. One day, while reviewing success stories from the program, Barron received a letter from Joe, the man they had met on the streets during that cold winter night. Joe had turned his life around, thanks to the mentorship and resources provided by the initiative. He now worked as a counselor at a shelter and was helping others find their way out of homelessness. The letter read, "You didn't just give me food and a card that night. You gave me a reason to believe in myself again. Thank you for seeing me when no one else did." Barron shared the letter with Tom, who teared up as he read it. "This is why we do this," Tom said, "for people like Joe, for the ones who feel forgotten." Their work also began influencing public policy. Inspired by the initiative's success, lawmakers introduced new legislation aimed at tackling the root causes of poverty and homelessness. The Second Chances Act was passed, providing funding for affordable housing, job training programs, and mental health services nationwide. Tom and Barron were invited to the White House for the signing ceremony, a moment that symbolized how far their journey had come. Despite these achievements, both men remained humble. Tom often reminded Barron of their shared purpose. "We started this to help people, not for recognition," he would say. And Barron would nod, echoing the sentiment with his actions. One evening, as they sat together in a quiet cafe after a long day, Tom reflected on the chain of events that had brought them here. "You know," he said, "if you hadn't stopped that day, none of this would exist. One decision changed everything." Barron smiled thoughtfully. "And if you hadn't believed in that moment, hadn't taken the first step toward change, we wouldn't be sitting here either." It wasn't just me, Tom. It was both of us. The cafe grew silent as they sat in comfortable reflection, their journey etched in the quiet understanding between them. They didn't need grand accolades or headlines to validate their work. The real reward was in the lives they'd touched and the hope they'd reignited in countless others. Years later, Tom and Barron's story became the subject of books and documentaries, inspiring generations to come. Schools began teaching about the power of empathy and the importance of taking action, no matter how small. And on the anniversary of their first meeting, Second Chances Day was celebrated worldwide, a reminder that even the simplest acts of kindness could create ripples that transformed lives. Through it all, Tom never forgot the handwritten note Barron had given him that first day. It remained framed on his wall, a constant reminder of the moment his life began to change. Beneath it, he had added his own words. "Hope isn't something you find, it's something you give, and it can change the world."